podcasts. Whoa, what was that zany noise happening there?
Was that from the past or the future?
We'll never know.
No one will know. Except if you listen to the end of this podcast.
Welcome back to another Games Explained podcast. We are here to talk about games and talk about true love.
It's a popular topic.
We are your hosts,
Dan.
Ben.
and Matt. Our format is we start by talking about games that we played recently, and then we have a main topic, which for today is electrified games.
Yowza.
Insert that sound again.
I can't remember exactly what the sound is at this particular moment.
Insert it in pre,
Yes, that's right.
as opposed to post.
There you go. Nailed it. Who's going to start this thing off?
Yeah, what have you been playing?
I can kick it off. So a game that we've played on and off at home is a game called Bananagrams. You can think of it sort of like Speed Scrabble, and everybody's got their own board, but they still share tiles. So I kind of like this game because I'm not a huge Scrabble fan, and this is like a more palatable version of Scrabble for people that like to play games with Scrabble fans. So it lets people like dig into the words, and there's the same rules of, what words count. Letters don't have particular point values. All you care about is using up all of your tiles. You don't have to be creative and like trying to use your cues and whatever in the most valuable ways. You just have to use them. And so the objective of the game is you want to be the person who finishes up the last tile out of the whole pile of tiles. And you start off with a certain number, same as in Scrabble. And every time you use up all your tiles, you say a word. I think it's peel. And then everybody goes in, they pull off another tile from the pile.
Oh, like they peel it from the pile?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole board game comes in a bag that's shaped like a banana. I forgot to mention that. That's pretty important. That's the only reason it's called Bananagrams. It's otherwise not related to bananas at all. So yeah, everybody takes an extra tile. And then if you want, you can trade one of your tiles for 3 extra tiles if you're really stuck. More often than not, though, I'll just kind of wait until someone else says peel. I'll just take the 1 bonus rather than having to deal with 3 new ones. But yeah, you just try and use up all your tiles in some way that fits. You can take apart your board at any time and rebuild it, so you're not stuck with any words that you've made in the past.
Oh.
And so it's a lot more forgiving that way as well. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of the speed games, but because you're playing this on your own for the most part, it doesn't really have any impact on you because of the speed. And unlike Scrabble, which, depending on who you're playing with, they might sit there thinking about their word for 20 minutes while they're trying to find the one that's worth the most. And this kind of gets it over and done with in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So it's a nice, quick game that still has that flavor of Scrabble word games.
And it certainly reduces the playtime. If Scrabble is not your bag because of how long it takes for you and your pals to get to the end of a game, then Bananagrams is your bag. Shaped like a banana.
I've played a lot of Bananagrams, and the poor version, also known as the camp version, where you just have a whole bunch of Scrabble kits, but they've all been mixed together anyway, and you just take those pieces. And what I appreciate about Bananagrams is the ongoing risk reward of you always have the option to just demolish your personal puzzle and start again. Mm-hmm. Like if all you have in your hand is a cue, you can say, I hope there's a word that I can attach a cue to, or you can just wreck a branch of it or wreck the whole thing and then form it around this difficult letter instead.
Yep.
I love it. I love it.
I did not know that was a rule of that game, and frankly, I haven't played the game before.
Oh.
How long does a game of Bananagrams take usually?
I would say
5 minutes.
Yeah,
if
5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit longer depending on the people that you're playing with. They might be sitting there thinking a little bit more methodically. Probably if they're Scrabble players, they're used to thinking a little bit longer to get those long words. But yeah, it's pretty quick.
And to clarify, it's when is the game finished? When you run out of tiles, or when there are no more tiles?
Once you would call peel, but not everyone can get a tile, then you've won the game, assuming that your words are all valid. So once, I think you yell out split when that's the case. So if there's only 3 tiles left in the middle and you've got 5 people playing, you call split. when you finish your thing, everybody gets to look at your board and make sure that your words are correct. And if there's anything missing there, then you get vetoed. And I forget what the rules are. This might be a house rule that we sometimes will just throw the tiles from the one person's broken board and just put them in the middle and keep playing with that.
And they're eliminated.
Yeah.
Whoa, I've never played that way.
Other options where you
that's
just
fun.
go to the second place person and check their board and see.
That's
if it's
not nearly as fun.
good. Yeah.
I like that this game, if you can get some good momentum if you're in lead, because if you're the one who always has a finished board, like it's clean, and you pick up two tiles and you figure out a quick way to shuffle it, you can always be the one to add people's tiles, and then your friends get flooded with tiles.
Yeah.
They're like, I have 10 tiles, and what do I even do with this? I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, that happens very frequently, and especially if you have some nice long words, so you can quickly add a letter on just to make some 2-letter words. Then you can get a nice quick chain in there. But those chains typically last like maybe 3 or 4 tiles, and then you kind of have to start figuring out a little bit more carefully where things go.
Yep. Even if you have momentum, all of a sudden you'll pick a Q, and then you're toast. And
Those Qs are brutal.
Phenomenal game.
So what have you been playing, Matt?
Oh, what has Matt been playing? Well, I'm going to talk about Robo Rally, because everyone should talk about Robo Rally. I played this game 8-player, which is the maximum. Robo Rally, just as a refresher, I'm pretty sure I talked about it in a previous episode. You are a robot and you program your moves. For example, move 1 ahead or rotate left. You program 5 of them in, and then everyone does those one at a time together. So everyone will do their first instruction, and then you'll resolve it, and everyone will do their second one. And critically, you don't get to change the order once you've locked them in at the beginning. And so your robot will end up getting lasered by another robot or pushed out of the way, and you have no choice but to continue the instructions, because it's just a robot. It's just an automaton. And so you'll end up being pushed 1 to the left and then walk yourself off an edge.
Yeah.
And it's so chaotic with 8 players, and it's so funny because everyone's shooting everyone and everyone's getting pushed, and you could have calculated in your brain, okay, I'm going to go here, and then the conveyor belt will move me, and then the spinner will move me, and then I'll walk over here, and I'll be right by the goal. But by the time you've actually done those instructions, you're at the opposite end of the board, half dead.
Yeah, the more you rely on your environment, the more screwed up you're going to be if anything goes off, because you're planning to be thrown all over and you get thrown in different ways, and it's just madness. It's very unforgiving.
So fun. So we played with a whole bunch of people who had never played before, and some people who were like, I don't understand games. I mean, I guess I'll play because this is the only game happening today. But everyone had a tremendous time, and I think a big part of that was we set the expectations clearly at the underground, like the lowest expectations. We said, this is going to be chaos. Some people won't even get to a goal. Someone will win, but it'll feel random. It's going to be chaos. Let's have some snacks and play chaos game.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That game's easy. You just have to get in the head of 7 other people and know exactly what they're going to do ahead of time.
Yeah.
Think 12 moves ahead or whatever. What is it? You can play up to 5 cards?
It's
like 5 actions ahead of time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you get like damage or something, you get less actions. Am I right?
Oh, man.
You can only withstand us. Oh, right. Once you've got some damage, then you like lock in moves from previous rounds or something, right?
That's right. That's how it is.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you have to live with choices you've made in the past, and yeah.
So, for example, this last time we played, someone had their final move locked in. That was a move forward 3 spaces. So they know whatever they're going to do, at the end it's going to be a mad sprint. And they better not be facing a ledge.
That is so good.
It's so silly. I love it. Robo Rally.
Yeah. That's a game where like the person that's in the lead has a bit of an advantage because they can't get that chaotic impact from another player at that moment while you're all going towards the same goal. But if I remember correctly, there's multiple goals around the map.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've reached the goal, then you start turning around and going back to try and find another place. And then you get all that chaos from everyone else that's trying to go against the stream. And it's got some nice sort of rubber banding stuff in there.
And on the particular map we played, to get to the first goal, it was a straight open line. And so most people would just walk in a straight line. Mm-hmm. But if you fell off a ledge and respawned, you would also be walking in a straight line But that means since you're last in line, you're shooting everyone in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was some rubber banding as well, where you're in last place, but you're just roasting everyone while you catch up.
Yeah. There's also, like, you're playing your moves from cards that you've drawn randomly. And so while your optimal move might be, you know, go straight to and take a right, maybe you only have left turns. And so you what you might just do deliberately is start going in circles and trying to push people just to kill your turn and then try again harder the next time.
It's true. And as you get damaged, you get less choice.
Right.
So at one point I had one card that I got to choose and one card that I picked up. So really no choice at all. For Robo Rally, if our listeners are going to play, I recommend house rules to make it less harmful. For example, when you fall off a ledge, you're supposed to respawn, but still with some damage. Don't do that. Just do a full heal, like it hurts enough.
Mario Kart style.
And there's a rule we did play with, which is at the beginning of a turn, you say, I'm going to shut down for a whole turn, but it's the turn after you're going to do a whole bunch of actions. So you have to do a whole bunch of actions, and then you had previously said, now I'm going to wait a whole turn and get pushed around. It would be interesting to allow people to just like decide the turn that would be skipped. That I'm just going to get pushed around. I'm not going to move anywhere, but I'm going to heal up. Interesting. House rules. I love house rules. We should talk about house rules sometime.
We should.
Daniel.
Yeah.
What game have you been playing? Tell us about games.
This game bridges the gap between our topic of the day and our sound effect at the beginning of the day, aka podcast. This game is Dark Tower. My parents moved recently and they had a bunch of old board games in their basement that I stole, and Dark Tower is one of them. And I remember seeing it as a child and like thinking, this looks like it might be fun. My parents saying, oh, this is much too complicated for you. And it was almost too complicated for me now. So they maybe knew what they were talking about. But this is a game that relies on a tower that's like 10 inches tall or something like this. And it is powered by what is it? D batteries, the big circle ones.
Nice.
It's been a while.
I think maybe just 1D battery, so it's not that crazy. But the tower contains the information of the game. It determines your difficulty when you start. It keeps track of everybody's resources. And basically it's a fantasy style game where you have an army that's moving around a board. You have to move around to 4 different quadrants of the board to acquire 3 different keys. And when you return to your home quadrant, you bring your keys to the tower. And when you get to the tower, you have to find the right combination to put your keys into the tower. and then once you make it into the tower, you have to fight your way through the massive brigands who are defending the tower. And then you win the game.
That does sound mildly complicated.
It is. And you have, all of the resources that you have, which I believe are the number of warriors that you have, the amount of food that you have to feed those warriors, which is once per turn for 10 or less warriors, but two food per turn if you have more than 10, and 3 if you have more than 20, whatever. It scales up like that. You also have to keep track of, there's other stuff too that I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but you have like a cardboard board in front of you with plastic pegs like you'd have in Battleship, that you move around in those pegs to show how much of those things you have. There's a tens digit and ones digit peg.
Oh, yeah.
To keep track of it. But the thing is, it's really easy to forget to do the accounting for like your food on a turn. Like whenever it gets to your turn, you just have to knock down the number of pegs according to the number of warriors that you have. And the game doesn't lie because the tower has batteries in it. And if you run out of food, your warriors will start dying. You'll hear this like like whatever, some funeral sounding song, and
so the game keeps track of the stuff for you, but it doesn't tell you about those stats.
Yeah, I think with food, it tells you once you have like 2 turns left for food or something like that. It gives you like a little warning beep when you have not as much.
Is it literally just a beep happens and you have to know?
Yeah. So the tower itself, the way that it works is there are 3 big light bulbs. Vertically in the front of the tower, and above that is just digital numbers at the top keeping track of things. And so the lights backlight on the thing that the numbers are telling you about. So the tower will turn around so that the warrior is on the top.
Like it's motorized and it actually
yeah,
spins?
It's motorized,
Wow.
so the inside of the tower spins.
That's what that sound is, right?
That's what the sound is, where it's not actually a tone, where it's just like whirring. It is the gears inside the tower moving these translucent panels, and so it moves it to the right place, and then it gets backlit, and it'll say like it'll be a picture of a warrior, and then that warrior is backlit for you, so you can tell that we're talking about warriors, and it tells you the number at the top, and then it'll spin around and it'll show you brigands. It'll backlight the picture of a brigand, and then it'll say the number on top, and then it'll do the math on its own to figure out if your warriors are winning the fight. And you have the ability to escape a fight in the middle of it. There are random encounters for each step of the board that you move through, where it could be a dragon comes and you lose a quarter of your units, unless you have the sword, which is a type of thing that you need to keep track of on your peg. And if the dragon hits you and you have the sword, you slay the dragon and get all the gold and warriors that it had gotten from other players.
Nice.
So just so I have a good, clear mental image of what you just described, would that be like it goes and it shows a dragon and it says 1, and then it just makes beeping sounds because you had a sword, and then it says there are 0 dragons now?
Pretty much. The with dragons, it doesn't give you a number. It's just like the dragon has come.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll play like a sad sound if you don't have the sword, and then it will show you your new number of warriors and your new number of gold that's left over after the dragon has attacked you. If you do have the sword, a happy sound will play, and it will show you your new number of warriors, but it'll be all the warriors that the dragon had defeated in the past and all the gold that it had acquired from everyone else in the past.
So how do you give input to the tower? How do you inform it of your decisions?
So everybody starts the game with the same number of resources as far as food, gold, warriors, etc. And then as I move to different places, different events happen. Like you're supposed to go inside of a tomb to try and find the key.
But do you like physically move a token and then the tower has a sensor there?
Good question. You do physically move a token. You press there's different buttons on the interface of the tower, where one button is just a regular move into a normal space. There's another button that's a move into a shop. There's another button that's a move into a tomb or a ruins, which are the same thing. They're just two different types of land.
So you let it know what you just stepped on.
You tell it what type of land you stepped into, and for it to know because I talked about there being 4 quadrants, and you get a key from each quadrant, and then the last one you go up to the tower. There is a frontier that extends the length of the map, so that you have to step across the frontier before you go into the next zone, which tells the tower, okay, now I need to place the new random key in this zone.
That's clever.
To find it in this tomb or whatever.
This is
so you
also
just have
clever.
to like go back and raid these tombs until you find the key. And then there's like a sanctuary space where you get your food back and your warriors back and this kind of thing. Yeah.
So you mentioned that this game was quite complicated.
Yeah.
Like lots of rules, pretty complex. Do you think that it being an electronic game makes is that the reason it's so complicated, or is that the only reason a complicated game like this is playable is because this tower is keeping track for you?
I think it's possibly less complicated because of the tower. I think maybe the part that would have tripped me up as a youngin is there are a lot of edge cases that the rule books talk about that you need to keep in mind that the tower is keeping track of that you are not. Not edge cases, but like little things like keeping track of your food, and like once you hit this threshold, you're actually spending 2 food per turn.
So you could be like, I think I have this much, but the tower is saying I'm dying. I needed to keep track. That was complicated.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And you're forgiving in a game where you're playing against your friends or whatever, but like if you click next turn on the tower, then then you can't like redo what you've done.
Yeah.
Then the tower's kept track of that information, and you can't like go in and adjust it. That's just how it is.
That reminds me of a previous podcast where we talked about electronic versions of board games,
like video games,
and where the game is changed for that reason. Like no house rules are allowed unless they're programmed in a special menu.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no forgiveness.
Mm.
It's just, here are the rules. There is a machine involved now.
I will clarify, there is a undo what I just did button, but
Okay.
I think it also ends your turn.
Oh,
So you just like you if you make a mistake, you just have to forfeit your turn for that round.
yikes.
Yeah. It
Oh, interesting.
It undoes what happened. Like if you lost resources or something like that, it'll give them back to you, but you can't do anything else. It just goes to the next person.
That's kind of nice.
It is, and at the same time unforgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But at least there's something built into it that gives you some kind of recompense for making a mistake or whatever.
Right.
I mean, this game doesn't need to have something electronic keeping track of all this stuff for you. Like you and your allies could keep track of this, and you could have like random dice rolls to figure out how many enemy units you're fighting, or like have a deck of cards and draw it to see if you get the key for that round, and have like a separate deck for Frontier number 2 and number 3 or whatever.
You could make the tower sound just with your mouth instead.
I mean, that is really the reason that people play this game, I think. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was like it felt like a sort of like Dungeons and Dragons derivative that's condensed into 1 or 2 hours, where you have that feeling of adventure and random battles where you can have some strategy where you think, okay, I'm about to enter this big fight. I should probably go and buy some warriors at the shop before I head up to the tower or whatever else. And then there's that element of randomly trying to guess the order of keys to go into the tower too, which it predetermines ahead of time. And yeah, the tower also, like, it has like what's it called, the Lazy Susan, the thing that spins around.
Yeah.
You can like spin it around in the middle of the board so that you're the only one who can read the readout, but then there's the audio cues for other people that sort of tell you, like,
Oh, interesting. So you can like strategically try and hide stuff, but
yeah, like for example, when you're trying to figure out how to enter the tower, you don't want anyone else to see what your attempts are, so it just shows you, and it just gives you an audio cue. You failed at getting into the tower. It's the next person's turn, that kind of thing.
Wait, this is not a cooperative game?
No, you are, each of you is from one of the 4 different kingdoms. So
It's like a race?
It's a race to defeat the brigands in the tower and reclaim the scepter of something or other.
Which, I mean, if your buddy does it, it's good. Like, the brigands are gone, but you want all the glory. So it's a race.
Yes. I don't think there's, I'm trying to remember if there's any element of interacting with each other aside from, there is a wizard that you can acquire where you immediately use it on another player, and then you just automatically steal something from them unless they have a particular item. So I think that might be the only interaction aside from like this dragon that randomly attacks people, and if you happen to be the one to slay it, you get the stuff that everyone else lost.
I wonder what has happened in this wizard's life that makes them a wizard thief for hire.
yeah.
You could just steal money, but no. You want to steal specific things for other people for money.
Yep.
I love it.
It's pretty fun. That is a one of, I think, 3 of these like 80s style electronic board games that I have in my house right now.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, is that I just did some quick Googling. This game came out in 1981. That's the year before the Commodore 64 came out.
Oh,
What?
Like this A must have been a very expensive game. And B, like, this one must have been such a novelty to have like all these flashing lights and this motorized thing going around.
Yeah.
And like, as someone who does electronics as a hobby thing, like, I deal with microcontrollers, which are just like a single chip computer. It's the kind of thing you would find in a keyboard or mouse or things like that. That's normally how you would implement something like this in a game these days. But, you know, the Commodore 64 was less powerful than modern day microcontrollers. So like, it's not doing super complicated stuff. It's turning on lights and it's activating a motor. So that doesn't require tons of horsepower, but it's still like, it's an impressive feat for the early 80s.
Yep. Yeah. I read a list that said it was one of the most rare, like, special games that are out there of this variety.
I can imagine.
So it's kind of nice that I have access to it. I was very nervous because I try when I brought it out, try as I might, I couldn't get it to work. So I have some Barrasso that I used with a Q-tip, basically like a metal cleaner, and I like rubbed it on the contacts because they were all messed up because there was a battery in there for 20 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I had to unscrew the whole thing and like physically push the gears with my fingers in order for them to actually start moving in the first place because they were seized. And then it like did a slow like, and then it was up to speed.
Back to
and
life.
Everything was fixed. Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I had fun with it. It's a good game. The other two games that I have that are battery powered from the 80s, one is called Lost Treasure.
I remember that one.
Yeah, that one is really good. And one is called Electronic Detective, which I played once as a preparation for this for this podcast.
I wish I was an electronic detective.
Oh man,
Is that like a robot who solves crimes?
it's so there's a it's Clue-esque in that you're trying to solve the murder mystery. There is a person who has died, and you have to figure out a bunch of information about the killer. You can figure out which weapon they used, like which type of gun they used on the victim. You have to figure out where the murder took place and then where the murderer ran to afterwards. And there's 3 different categories for that. There's like uptown and downtown.
Hold on.
And there's
what part of solving a crime is where did they go after?
well, that's so it's like
We need a motive. We need what he had for dinner the next day.
I should say finding out where he went afterwards helps you to figure out, leads you to who it is, like because you ask the person, where were you when this happened?
Oh,
And that kind of
sure,
thing.
yeah.
That's what I mean to say.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and so so there's 3 different levels of location. There is uptown or downtown. There is east side, west side, and like middle side or something like this. And then there are 6 different locations like factory, theater, whatever. And each game, those combinations are different. Like the factory in this game is downtown on the east side or whatever. And so each person has different information about who is where when it took place. You know, were they in the same location as the murder weapon when it happened, and that kind of thing. And you can and this is another one where the rule books are not. There's like stuff in there that you would not intuitively know. Like there's only 2. There can only be a maximum of 2 males and 2 females in these locations, and a male with an odd number and an even number, and a female with an odd number and an even number, because they all have like they're all numerically listed in this like list of contacts basically.
Yeah, it kind of becomes one of those logic puzzle things.
Yeah, exactly. And so the electronic part of that game is when you start to interrogate somebody, it shows some codes on the screen, and it relates to like, this is where I was, this is who I saw, there was a murder weapon there, that kind of thing. And then you can secretly ask this person more pointed questions. The information they give to everyone is random, and might be a combination of different things. So it's like an NPC in a video game.
This reminds me of what happens when you play Clue and one person has guessed already, so they're out, but they know the answer, and then you try to get information from them. And it's like piecemeal and doesn't make sense because they don't want it to just give you the answer, but you can like coax some information out of them.
Yeah, that's the electronic suspects version in this game.
But I like that this electronic version, you don't have to knock yourself out of the game by guessing.
Right, actually, there is a point where you make a decision about who you believe that it is, and I forget if you have multiple tries at this or what, but I do remember the element of you getting shot, and then you hear the dang 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 if you pick wrong.
Wow.
So for some reason, the killer shoots you if you accuse someone who's not him.
Because if you're accusing someone, your back is obviously turned to the
Obviously,
There you
it
go.
was you, and then nobody's paying attention to the guy shooting you. They just know it wasn't the guy you were talking to.
A room full of people in a circle. You walk up nose to nose with someone to accuse them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone's blindfolded. Except the killer.
Yes. And then the last battery-powered game is... I think the common element in a lot of these games is that the electronics are keeping track of random information that could be concealed ahead of time, but no player has to be responsible for concealing that information. It's the game that does it. And so Lost Treasure, there's a grid. It's something like 16 by 16. I don't know. I'm just pulling that number out. And there's a gold piece of treasure and a silver piece of treasure in 2 different places on this map. And you can, based on your location, you can ask the game whether the gold is south of your location. And if it is, then you can like sort of track it so that it is now, okay, it can't be any higher than spot number 10. And so you track that it's lower than that location, and eventually you narrow it down. Each person narrows it down east, west, north, south until it's one single square. And then when you get to that square, you go for a scuba dive, and you have a limited supply of air, and you can look into 9 different spots on this board, and they are random heights and depths, and there's different amounts of treasure in each of those places. And then once you bring your treasure back to port, you actually claim it, and people can like pirate the treasure from you as you try and dump it off.
I remember that game having a lot of like, it was a high intensity thing when you started doing the scuba diving because you have a limited amount of air, and so you can't hit all 9 of the squares, but you can hit as many as you dare try. Yeah. So you hope that you're hitting very shallow ones at first and that you get lucky, but if you hit one that happens to be really deep, you're like, oh no, this is using up all my air, and like this is going to be the one that's got the gold, so I got to keep going.
Yeah.
And if you don't come up in time, then like I forget what the consequences are, but it was definitely a stressful situation.
Yeah. So it keeps track of your air by 6 red LEDs on the side, and then the depth is an audio cue. So it goes
No.
and the more it goes down, the lower
So
you
good.
are under the water. And so you get if you have like 2 LEDs worth of air left, and it's like you're like, oh no. And if you lose it, then you drop all your treasure in the square that you were on.
Yeah.
So then other people can come in on the next turn, and they know that it's in this square, so they can just go and dive right for that one. Yeah,
That's so fun. I like the tenseness of hearing that extended sound.
It's an element of dexterity games because like you have to quickly switch from button to button, and you know there's a time constraint for your actions.
That's so fun.
So these games didn't last long. This type of game, I should say.
Well, no, but there are other examples we can think of, and maybe ones that have lasted just a touch longer. Like Operation.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
Have we not talked about Operation? So for the uninitiated, Operation is a classic, at least North American game, where there's a patient with many open wounds lying on the table, and you have metal tweezers, and each wound is a cavity with metal around the rim and an object inside that you have to get out, which will be like a bucket of water or a wisdom tooth or something that is just made up and fun. It's not a gruesome game, don't worry. This isn't Surgeon Simulator. This is Operation. But if your metal tongs touch the edge, bzzzt, your turn's over, or you get a penalty or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually played the game, but it's just a pop culture thing where you know about it.
I haven't.
Yeah, I think I might even own a copy that's in the plastic wrap. It's just one of those games.
But that's an example where it's nice to have an impartial, fully authoritative judge of what happened. You don't have to have people watching and be like, "Oh, you touched it." "Oh, no, I didn't." No, you made an electrical connection.
Yep.
It's the next guy's turn.
Yeah. That is a good example.
Yeah, that reminds me of another type of game that it's not like a specific game, but it's a sort of a game that has been around in different variations where you have like a metal wire. It's sort of like a coat hanger wire where it's a rigid and forms like a kind of an obstacle course, sort of like those like bead toys you find for kids in a dentist's office. And then it's got a ring on the end of a wand, and you have to try and navigate this ring along this winding metal obstacle course and without touching the wire, the ring. And if you do, then it in some variations will just buzz or have a light go off or something. In other versions that people may have hacked, it might be connected to a taser or something. So you get a little bit of
little
tactile feedback.
Tactile feedback.
Yeah.
To put it mildly. That's fantastic. They should put those outside of dentist's office.
Oh my.
Wow.
They should have the dentists show that they can do that successfely
Yeah.
There you go.
before they operate
I
on
have
you.
the steady hands to make this operation successful. Don't doubt me.
And outside of surgeons, they'll have Operation.
Yeah.
You have to prove yourself, doctor.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen, I forget what board game this is, but I remember a while back seeing a board game that was some kind of like pirate high seas game in which there is a physical board and the pieces are your phone and it's like an app that you get, and you have a little avatar of your ship on your phone, and you move your phone around, and I forget what benefits that had as far as gameplay using your phone as the piece. But I wonder, like that is sort of like the modern day battery powered an example of modern day battery powered integration into board games.
Yeah, electronics are coming back into gaming.
Yeah. And using the player's existing phone is definitely a cheap way for game developers to get that tactile electronic feedback without having to ship custom electronics and motors and stuff.
Yeah. So in what ways could we use harness this technology for the betterment of games today?
Well, keeping track of information is nice. It's nice when you don't have to roll a whole bunch of dice and do a whole bunch of math, and then you get to see what happened. It just like gives you a beep. So you could have very complex simulations. Like you could have a realistic stock market that's happening, and no one has to like manually put in numbers or whatever.
Yeah. There are games where I'm frustrated where I have to put, like, if you want to reset the game or something, and you have to move all the pieces back to their first positions or whatever, and that kind of thing. Whereas if you have something computing that for you, it can just reset everything without having to think about it at all, right?
Yeah, and there's also the element of using a phone to provide some sort of augmented reality sort of experience, either like, you know, hand up, looking through the camera to see something, or even just having the phone like right on the board and, you know, moving it around just to use it as like a viewing lens, so you can say like see an X-ray of a thing that you're looking at on the board or something.
Ooh. One way of using phones for board games that I very much enjoy is having an app choose who goes first, which is a way of using a computer as a neutral third party.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can't get angry. It's a computer. Like, it doesn't have biases.
Yeah.
Except for the biases we know it has.
It's always great when you play a game with your spouse or something, and they're like, "But I did the dishes yesterday, so don't do this to me in this game." Oh snap! That kind of thing.
When it gets meta.
Yeah, get the computers to solve all your marital problems.
Computer, who's right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Another thing that I was just thinking about, if you had like a pirate ship that you could like upgrade or something, if you only had tactile pieces, you might have to combine different elements of a game, like, or replace it with a different card if you like had a ship that got better throughout the game. But if you had your phone or something else, then it could just be built into that, and you wouldn't have to have extra pieces. It would just do it. Or if there were certain statistics or something, you could have like a health bar for your pirate ship, and not have to like keep track on pen and paper or like move things around to keep track of those things. And again, it's objective, and it's just there in front of you.
Another potentially interesting thing about doing phones as part of a board game is rebalancing the stats of a game after it's been shipped. You can actually like ship bug fixes to a board game or DLC. So, I mean, like, that's not even that weird of a stretch, considering like collectible card games or like Dungeons and Dragons tabletop games, or things like legacy games where you have to buy these extra packs to do more stuff. Like, it's not downloadable content, but it is additional content that you can buy. And by having your phone be part of the game, you could potentially ship that at a lower cost to the player.
Yeah, that is true. Like, anytime you have a game with tons of pieces, that just in and of itself is going to ramp up the price of the game. So yeah, the fewer physical things that need to be a part of it, especially if it's an add-on to the game, like that should be relatively cheap to integrate in what you're doing. So,
though I must say I'm not generally a fan of electronics added to board games. I find there's so much charm in physical things where the pieces fit together, and that's part of the mechanic of the game, and you can tell like these pieces are this shape, so you know what function it has in the board. Like you can be so expressive with teaching the mechanics through shapes and physical orientation. I think board games are just mad clever because they generally don't use electronics. So I love that charm. And I hope that doesn't go away.
But thank you, 80s, for these gems that we do have.
Thank you,
To
the
this
80s. Well, thanks for tuning in. We are Games Explained. Tune in next time when we talk about giants.
How big do they really get?